Oh, hello there. Welcome to Brokenomics. Much better studio this, isn't it? Much more to my taste. Yes, feels proper, doesn't it? Right, so, Brokenomics episode, can't remember, but number 1 in the studio that I now really like, the library. So, let's get into it. Guys, it occurs to me that I've been, taking these individual concepts, these individual ideas, and I've been doing episodes on them, and I've been taking guests and talking through a whole bunch of issues of them. But I've not really done a sort of summation, just a download of my thought process, what I think's interesting, where my mind is focused at the moment, the stuff that I have been talking about, some of the stuff that I want to talk about. I just want to kind of bring it all together and give you a sense of where my mind is at, and as much as anything, give you an opportunity to say, what you find particularly interesting in this sort of stream of consciousness that I'm going to give you, an opportunity for you to say what kind of guests you'd like me to get on and which of these ideas you'd like to tease out a bit more. So let's just have a catch up, a rundown of where I think we're at, and your feedback will be fantastic on this because it can help us shape where we go forward with this stuff. So top themes that are on my mind at the moment that I think are interesting. Number 1 is going to have to go to AI. I think AI is going to be truly transformational. It's something that I've talked about on a number of occasions. I find that it's something that people often get really hung up on the question of, is it intelligent? Now, I've been thinking about, how to frame this. I think that it already is intelligent to a point. And I think the intelligence is going to continue to evolve quite quickly from where we are here. So yes, I think it is intelligent, but I think it's intelligent in a fundamentally different way to the way that we would consider intelligence. Now, the best example I can give of this is, consider the bird. How does a bird fly? Well, not the same way that humans fly. The way that humans fly is we get a whole load of aluminium, plastic, we put it into a shape, we run jet fuel through an engine, and we are able to fly, in a process which is just fundamentally different to the way that birds do it. In fact, I think even with modern technology, we would really struggle to for flying the same way that a bird does, simply through the motion of the wings. And actually, if you take it one step further and consider how does a bird fly, well, the way that it does it is remarkable because nature constructs its flying machine using only the most common elements available in the universe. Lots of carbon goes into it. Molecules such as oxygen and other organic compounds. It is a flying machine that is able to repair itself if it encounters injuries, and it's able to reproduce. None of our flying machines are able to do those things. So we have achieved flight, but we've done it our own way. So when it comes to AI, I do not expect AI to think in the same way we do. We're going to brute force it another way. We're just going to take a huge amount of compute, a huge amount of data. Started off with some clever algorithms, and we're going to run it through a neural net, and it's going to start doing something. We are going to brute force a version of intelligence, but a version that is still going to be very effective because I can get to Australia a lot faster than a bird can using our flying techniques. So it is going to be its own form of technology. But so I don't get hung up on that whole question about is it intelligent or not? Because I think it clearly is, and I've spent enough time with it now to know that it clearly is. But I'll tell you why it's so significant. The reason I think this is so significant is because all previous human technology has been based on basically replacing labour. So it is, if you think about it, the digging machines, the moving machines, all of that stuff, but actually even all of the other stuff that we think is a bit more clever, the spreadsheets or CAD or, the calculating stuff, all of that could be done with long form, with a bit of work. You can write it all out. This is the first time that we've had technology which is not replacing human labour, but human intelligence. In time, I think it will increasingly start to show signs of creativity and judgment as well. Now, if you think about what we have been able to do with our current suite of technology, we've been able to support a population of 8 billion in this world, with only a very small percentage of us being genuinely productive. And what do I mean by genuinely productive? For example, I don't actually mean me. I don't mean hairdressers, estate agents. I don't mean, all of the middlemen, all of that kind of stuff. Not there's anything wrong with me or estate agents or hairdressers or any of those other people. In terms of fundamentally productive thing, I'm talking about people who deal with, the necessary functionary building blocks of life. So people who produce energy, people who produce agriculture. You could probably extend that to logistics and a whole bunch of other stuff. A relatively small proportion of our population are engaged in those kind of things, and yet we're able to support this vast population around the world. What's going to happen now is that we're going to have two axes of technology replacing human functionality. So it's not just going to be the labor output that we've already had, it's also going to be the thinking process that goes along with it. So I'm expecting to see, I'm describing it here as two axes. So effectively, I'm thinking that there's going to be something in the order of a cubic increase in the productive output of the economy once this stuff starts to get really going. So I think that AI for this reason is absolutely fundamental. I think I'm going to probably keep coming back to it as I talk through the other themes I wanted to talk about in this. Some things to note: it will do jobs that we don't know that it will be good at. I'm not explaining this well. Okay, let me explain. So we have at the moment things that aren't quite AI, but they are effectively quite clever algorithms, and they are doing jobs that humans can't do because of the speed needed to do them. So a simple example would be something like, say, a car advert on a search engine. So let's say you are an individual who is in the market for buying a new car, and you've been shopping around, and you've been spending a lot of time looking at, say, the Audi site. Maybe you've booked a test drive at your local Audi or something like that. When you go and do your next search on your search engine is aware of a lot of this stuff, and that you as an individual in this case are very attractive to BMW, and BMW might want to pay £15 or some relatively high sum to get an advert in front of that person who is live looking for a car at this exact moment. So the algorithms are basically serving up an ad, but they're having to do all of this in a fraction of a second between you clicking search on whatever it is that you're looking for. That then needs to have a conversation with the BMW side servers and say, this is the information of the person. Do you want to bid for this? At £15, put an advert in front of this person, and then serve up the appropriate advert and get it back to that person. And all of this has to be done in a fraction of a second because the person has clicked search and they're waiting for their results to appear. So AI, a basic form of AI, is currently doing that job. And it is functionality that humans couldn't do. So what we are going to increasingly see is AI moving into roles that we didn't know that we needed them for, because it was something that we were never able to do before. But with AI, we're going to be able to build that in. So it's difficult to give examples of this kind of thing because I literally don't know what they're going to be. But what I'm telling you is that we are going to find that AI is going to start to permeate basically everything. At the moment, everybody thinks of AI in terms of replacing basically human. They kind of think of it as their autistic cousin, like Tom Cruise with Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman. You need to give him a lot of care and attention and point him in the right direction, but occasionally he's brilliant. But that's how we're kind of thinking of AI at the moment. It's clever but needs managing. What we're going to increasingly find is going to solve problems for us. Now, give you a great example of this. At the weekend, I was talking to an accountant, and I was saying, have you started to incorporate AI? Now, it's very interesting the immediate reaction that this accountant gave me. He said, well, if we did have AI, it would need to interact with our the software program that we use, because that's how we do accountancy in firm. We go through this software program. And I was like, yeah, but do you know what you're doing? What you're doing is you are basically treating the AI as just another person. You're sort of imagining it is a direct one-for-one relationship with somebody that you might hire, and you have to take them through this. No, actually, with AI, it doesn't work like that. You would just give it access to your underlying data set, and then you would ask it to solve problems for you. So you wouldn't need to interact with your software accountancy process in the first place. And I sort of warmed to my theme, and I was going through this, and I was saying, look, why do firms even have accountancy departments in the first place? It's fundamentally because, this was an engineering firm in question. It's fundamentally because, an engineering firm has engineers who do the engineering stuff, who will take the raw materials and the circuit boards and whatever else they get in and configure them in a way. It's just working with that as a means of material. But money is also a material that needs to be managed throughout the firm. And rather than getting engineers to do that, you get accountants to do that. And it provides a function that keeps the rest of the business running. And essentially, the accountancy function should be, how do I make most effective use of this resource, which is the money within the business? How do I save as much cost as I can? How do I generate the best sales that I can? How do I manage the flow of the money through it? That's effectively what the accountants are doing. And I think a lot of people in these sort of established positions, they have found a way to deliver the function in a way that is humanly possible. Working with large amounts of data and trying to get it produced with a fairly minimal number of people, and that typically results in going through the software packages. But actually, really, what it's about it is about drawing insights and managing these flows. And the software package that you're using is merely a mechanism to try and serve that up in a way that's intelligible to you and your underlying people. AI will just cut all of that middleware section of the process out, and you will be able to go straight from raw underlying data to creative insights and actionable outputs that you can draw from that underlying data and managing the flows throughout it. So I think a big part of it is that we just don't really know how to use it yet. And as soon as we do figure out what we can use it for, it will unlock a huge amount of additional GDP per head effectively. This is going to be similar to, in the first days of the internet, I remember people were thinking, oh, well, it's just going to be basically a digital version of the Yellow Pages, or it's just going to be a digital version of letters with emails. It actually ended up getting integrated into everything, and a whole series of jobs and industries started to come into existence that didn't exist back then, or at least reimagine industries. And I think that whole process is going to be here at the moment. I would urge you all to start using AI in your daily life. Go and use ChatGPT or whichever sort of software package that you're happy to use, and just get used to interacting with it. So here's a really easy way to start using it. So one of the first things I started doing with it was I would say to it, okay, ask me 7 questions. And on the basis of this, recommend to me 7 movies, or 7 TV series that are on Netflix, or recommend a book to me, or recommend an economic thinker that I might not have heard of. All this kind of stuff. So you can use it as a nice. That's a nice, easy way of sort of getting into it and it being useful. But actually, the way that I use it now is much often of basically telling it sort of the end point that I want to get to. So I'll say something to it like, I'm thinking about this issue. I've considered these angles. Make interesting points about them. Bring up other thinkers that I haven't considered. Or I do it things like on a daily basis now. I've been thinking about something. And rather than trying to search and find an article that relates to the thing that I'm thinking about, I will just tell it to produce the article. One of the themes I wanted to touch on later was robotification in Japan. So I basically just said, okay, produce me an article on the rise of robotification in Japan, bring in how it's being used in the care industry, compare it from now to 10 years ago, and also compare to where we think it's going to be in 2040. So all this kind of stuff. And I got it to give me something which was an excellent starting point, and I connect it to the internet and do all of these things. But actually, I use it in a whole bunch of different ways. So, previous weekend, I was having trouble getting the water chemistry in my pool right. So basically, I just took the AI along the process with me, and I said, okay, what kind of things should I be looking at? Talk me through it, and I fed back, what I was finding, and we kind of problem solved it together. It's that kind of process that I think is going to be becoming increasingly clear to people, that actually the way that we think we use it is not actually the way that it offers its most benefit. Because at the moment we're so focused on search, we tend to just ask questions and expect it. We're treating it like Google at the moment, and actually I think it is much more about solving the underlying problem. So AI I think is fantastic, and I have to keep touching on this as we go through this. Robotics is also the other thing that I think is incredibly interesting, going to be truly fundamental for things that are going to change next. I think that very soon cars will be robots effectively. There'd just be an AI-driven robot that drives. And actually, I think you want that. I think you probably think at the moment that you enjoy the independence and the freedom. You enjoy driving. I think seriously, once we get over the line on this one, you won't want to go back the other way. And the reason I'm thinking that is because in the UK, 5 people a day are killed in traffic accidents. 84 people are seriously injured every day. And honestly, as a father, the thing that I worry about the most is, my children not looking before they cross the road, or some other thing happening, and then them just getting, taken out. It's something that I've seen twice in my life. I've been walking along, and I've seen in both cases it was a young girl who got she presumably she didn't look properly before she crossed the road, or it was in a busy area, and has been rather messily hit by a car. And it's genuinely unpleasant. And as soon as you become a parent, it's one of the things that you end up worrying about quite a lot. And I think when we're on the other side of this AIification, the robotification of cars, it is something which we will look back on and say, thank God that happened. For all of those reasons, it will be a big cultural shift. But this is going to be a huge change for us, because the biggest job classification for unskilled males around the world is driver. And that is going to change. So this is one of a number of truly significant changes that are coming down the road. So look, my main point is there is going to be a lot of robotification. The robots most of them will not look like humans. They look like cars and trucks, or they look like small boxes. Give you an example. Effectively, what I'm saying is form will follow function with a lot of this stuff. But give you an example. In Amazon warehouses, they currently employ 500,000 robots, and most of those look like they look like sort of small boxes. And what they do is they sort of skim around the warehouse. They go under a sort of a shelf unit, and they sort of rise up and they carry the shelf unit around, and they're sort of constantly readjusting these warehouses, or they're doing picking, or there's something like that. And these 500,000 robots, they do the job of 2 million humans. So Amazon would need to have a workforce 2 million higher than it currently has of these 500,000 robots, because these robots are just so efficient. They never sleep, and they're fast. And I've been looking at the numbers on this, and what I'm seeing is that the robotification of the advanced economies is increasing at an annualized rate of about 31% at the moment. So that is enormous. It is not going to be that long before you start to find that there are at some point you'll hear that we've reached parity. So there is one robot worker for every human worker. And then it will just start to multiply out. That there'll be 5 robots for every human worker. I don't think that is again necessarily the worst thing in the world. I'll explain why. as I mentioned earlier with the AI piece, Japan has been starting to introduce. I mean, they are leading on this. The robotification of Japan is the furthest ahead, and they're starting to bring them into places like nursing homes. And Japan, of course, will need stuff like this because it has an aging population. They have falling birth rates, so they're just basically it's just not practical. And this is the case actually for a lot of Western countries. It is not practical to provide the level of care to elders that you would like to. So I think people, again, on this one, they often default to a sort of idealized notion, and they will say something like, well, when I'm old, I would rather be looked after by a human. Now, of course, that would be ideal, but really, how many of us can actually afford to have 24-hour, 24/7 human coverage when we get old? And I just think of my my own poor old grandmother in the last few years of her life. She wanted to remain in her own home, quite understandable. She's lived there for whatever it was, 50, 60 years, so she wanted to remain in her home. She had close family, so my aunt was checking on her twice a day to make sure that she was okay. So she was getting plenty of human care, but unfortunately, one day when my aunt had left, she tripped and fell and couldn't get back up again, and was in great distress for many hours until the aunt came back again. So when we start to think about having robot carers, I don't think of it in terms of this is going to be a replacement for humans. This is going to be in addition to it. Very few people can afford that 24/7 care, but it is perhaps feasible in the not too distant future that you could have a sort of an AI robot companion who, at the very least, can send an alert when you get into sort of one of these sort of situations when you're old, or perhaps it is actually able to render assistance straight away. And what this will mean is that you will be able to remain in your home for longer, be less of a burden on your family. I mean, hopefully you still see them a lot, but they're not going to feel obligated to be checking in on you all the time because they know you're going to be well. And realistically, the alternative to that is going to be the only other way that we could provide this level of care to the aging demographics that we had would be by importing a lot of low-wage people from North Africa to work in care homes. Now, I'm sure a lot of those people that we bring in to provide elder care, I'm sure a lot of them are fantastic and good at their jobs, but also there have been some absolute horror stories that I'm sure you're all aware of. So, and this is effectively why Japan is embracing it, because they recognise that you either need to go down the route of mass immigration, which is the route that we've taken, or you embrace automation, and that is what they're doing, and it it appears to be working for them. And I think this is something that we should not reject. And actually, I think I'd want it for myself. I'd want it in my own advanced years to have that to rely on, and of course all of the other ways. But just come back to the driver issue. Where you can pull out human cost, that will almost invariably happen. And as we are about to see the mass loss of jobs in driving industries, that is going to be hugely disruptive. I don't think we're going to get rid of humans entirely, but what you might well find is that instead of one human driving a truck, for example, there will be a convoy of 5 trucks, and there'll be one human sort of manager, loader, supervisor, who will be going along with it, who will be dealing with any issues. But those 5 trucks will be pretty much running in convoy. Third theme I wanted to talk about was energy. Broadly, what I think is happening here is, over the long term, or the medium long term, is that the marginal cost of energy is going to go to zero. And that is because of a combination of lower cost energy sources and efficiency, and also batterification. Especially when you combine this one with some sort of AI, that efficiency factor is going to go up significantly. And you can see this in the energy curve at the moment. You can see that energy efficiency is sort of trending upwards over time, and it shows no sign of slowing down. And what do I mean by AI? I mean basically, in a home environment, this will be something like turning off things when you're not using them, when they're not needing, and that will also extend into the industrial world. With home heating, we already kind of have something like this with Hive or Nest or any of those systems. So I bet, like me, in winter you tend to just leave your heating on all the time because it's too complicated fiddling around, turning it up and down and all kind of stuff. So you basically kind of tend to leave it at a sort of a consistent level. And even now we have processes that can detect when you're at home. It can learn your patterns, so it can supply heat only when it's actually needed. So from your perspective, the house is always heated. You don't perceive it being any different as being a sort of constantly heated home. But actually, what it's doing is it's noticing your patterns. So let's say you go to church for 4 hours every Sunday morning. It notices that. And so as you leave, it will basically let the heating, drop down a few level and then bring it back up to the level just before you get home. So again, from your perspective, you've got that sort of consistent energy usage, but actually there is a sort of saving in the background. Now you start applying that to a whole bunch of domestic, industrial, and retail uses, because we know that roughly 30% of all energy usage is wastage. So if you can take that out, that will be a significant saving from it, which when combined with some of these other things could be significant for the cost of energy. So the other aspect of this is going to be batrification. This could be a huge win, and that's mainly because our power generation processes are so utterly irregular at the moment. If you've ever looked at a chart of sort of energy uses through the day, you get this sort of big spike during the day and the evening, and then it sort of drops off significantly at night. And power stations, somewhat oversimplifying, but they don't like that. They like to maintain a sort of consistent standard. It is a right pain to be moving the level up and down. If we can increase batrification so that homes have more of these, it basically just levels out the energy usage, so you can absorb energy when not much of it's being used and release it when it is. The issue that we have with that, and the pushback we always get from it, is rare earth metals. There's an insufficient supply on these. That is something that Tesla have addressed. If you're really interested in getting into the depth of it in their battery day, basically there is a move away from rare earth metals to things more like lead-based batteries. Those are not used so much at the moment because basically they have much slower power speed draws from them. So they're not ideals for cars because you want that sudden burst of acceleration. You want to get the energy out quickly. But for many other, say, domestic industrial uses, the speed at which you draw the energy off doesn't need to be as high, and therefore you can use cheap alternatives, and the reliance on the rare earth metals go down, and the ability to do this. And the other thing on energy, I think the thing we're going to be forced to confront is nuclear. Nuclear is such an obvious win, but for some reason boomer politicians absolutely hate this option. It's significantly cheaper. It's got a much better safety profile. Fewer people die from nuclear energy than from solar every year because people fall off houses. So nuclear has to become a thing. The problem that we've got is that green energy has become basically a religion in the West. So what you've got is you've got politicians who are doing stupid things to try and force this change, rather than letting it be a function of the free market and pricing signals to work. So this is why I'm sometimes reticent to talk about this subject and sort of sound enthusiastic about it, because somebody's always going to come along and say, "Oh, you're being a hippie, Dan. What are you up to?" It's not that. There is a genuine energy technology revolution taking place, and if we could just get the nonsense politics out of it and let it be a function of the pricing mechanism, that would be entirely sensible. But because we got this sort of religious angle to it, that's why you see solar panels dottering roofs in northern Germany where it's cloudy, as opposed to going on the top of factories in southern Italy where the calculation should be a simple return on investment calculation. It should be, okay, I've got this much square roof footage, it cost me this much to get solar panels put on. It produces energy at exactly the time of day that I need it because I'm an industrial process that operates during the day. How much of a saving does that give me? How quickly does it pay off the investment and start generating a positive return for me? That's the sort of process that this should be using. Increasingly, I think it is going to have to come back to that. But the broader point is for a combination of the renewables, which, like I say, I'm not completely against as long as they're driven by pricing signals rather than ideology, and nuclear, which has to come back together with advances that are being made in batterification,